Right now, if you slept normally last night, you probably assume you did it the correct way. You dozed off, stayed unconscious for 7 or 8 hours in one long stretch, maybe woke up once to check your phone, then got up in the morning. That feels like the default setting for being human, the way sleep is just supposed to work. Except that one long, unbroken block of sleep might be one of the least natural ways humans have ever rested. Because our relationship with sleep doesn't start with mattresses or bedtimes or 8-hour targets. It starts millions of years ago, in the trees, with a body that had to solve a much harder problem than simply getting tired. Sleep itself is older than language, older than fire, older than anything we'd recognize as human. For millions of years, our primate ancestors slept in trees, wedged into branches, balancing unconsciousness against the very real risk of falling or being reached by a climbing predator in the dark. That single fact shaped everything that came after, because sleep was never free. Every hour spent unconscious was an hour spent vulnerable, and evolution does not tend to reward creatures who ignore that kind of math for long. In 2017, anthropologist David Sampson led a study comparing the sleep of Hadza hunter-gatherers in Tanzania to captive apes like chimpanzees and gorillas. His argument was simple. Modern humans sleep far less than our closest primate relatives, roughly 6 to 6.5 hours a night compared to 9 or 10 hours for a chimpanzee, but human sleep packs in a much higher proportion of REM and deep sleep into that shorter window. Sampson called this the sleep intensity hypothesis. The idea is that once early hominins came down out of the trees, sleeping less but more efficiently became the safer bet. A body that spent less time fully unconscious and used that time more effectively had a better shot at noticing danger and still getting the restorative benefits sleep provides. So if ancient humans were already sleeping shorter and lighter than other apes, when did we start sleeping in the one long uninterrupted block we consider normal today? In 2015, sleep researcher Jerome Siegel published a study in the journal Current Biology examining 3 modern hunter-gatherer societies that still live without electricity: the Hadza in Tanzania, the San in Namibia, and the Tsimane in Bolivia. What he found broke a widely held assumption. These groups didn't fall asleep the moment it got dark. They typically stayed awake for several hours after sunset. They didn't sleep noticeably longer in winter despite the much longer nights. And they averaged only around 6.5 to 7 hours of sleep a night, not the 8 or 9 hours many assume pre-industrial humans enjoyed. Now, here's what makes that finding so important. For decades, the common belief was that modern life, with its artificial light and packed schedules, robbed us of sleep our ancestors naturally got in abundance. Siegel's data suggested something almost the opposite. Sleep duration among people with zero access to electricity looked remarkably similar to sleep duration in industrialized societies today. If artificial light isn't the main culprit, then something else about how humans sleep, not just how long, is where the real difference might be hiding. That's where a second discovery becomes impossible to ignore. Historian Roger Ekirch, the leading expert on the history of nighttime sleep, spent years combing through thousands of pre-industrial diaries, court records, and medical texts across Europe. What he found again and again was a pattern almost nobody talks about today, what people at the time simply called first sleep and second sleep. People would go to bed a couple hours after dark, sleep for 3 or 4 hours, wake up for an hour or more in the middle of the night to pray, talk quietly with a partner, tend a fire, or just lie awake in the dark, and then fall into a second sleep until morning. This wasn't insomnia. It was considered completely ordinary, mentioned so casually in old records that nobody bothered explaining it. The way nobody today explains what lunch is. Ekirch argues that this 2-part pattern, not the single unbroken block we now consider standard, was the normal human sleep pattern for most of recorded history, and that our modern belief in one uninterrupted 8-hour stretch is actually a fairly recent invention, one that spread once artificial light pushed bedtimes later, and industrial schedules demanded people compress rest into a single efficient block. And I think he's onto something, because the pattern doesn't stop at historical records. In the early 1990s, psychiatrist Thomas Ware ran an experiment where volunteers spent weeks in near-total darkness for 14 hours a night, roughly matching the length of an ancient winter night with no artificial light at all. Within a few weeks, without being told anything about historical sleep patterns, the volunteers' sleep naturally split into 2 distinct segments, with a period of calm, quiet wakefulness in between, almost identical to what Ekirch had been finding buried in centuries-old diaries. Take away modern light, and the body seems to default right back to the same 2-part rhythm on its own. So what did that strange window of nighttime wakefulness actually get used for? Old medical texts and diaries describe it as valuable, not wasted time. People used it for prayer, quiet reflection, intimacy, checking on animals or a dying fire, and even interpreting dreams from their first sleep before drifting into the second. It functioned as a built-in pause, a quiet, semi-conscious stretch that some historians believe served as prime time for processing the day, working through anxieties, or simply being present with another person in the dark. One nightly habit was doing the job of a meditation session, a check on safety, a moment of intimacy, and a kind of built-in therapy session, all inside the same few hours of darkness. So here's the full picture. Millions of years ago, our ancestors slept in trees, trading safety for rest one branch at a time. Roughly 2 million years ago, once hominins moved to the ground, sleep evolved to become shorter and denser, prioritizing efficiency and vigilance over long stretches of unconsciousness. Modern hunter-gatherers living without electricity today still average only around 6.5 to 7 hours a night, proving that abundant, effortless sleep was never really the ancient default. Historical records across pre-industrial Europe show a completely different architecture entirely. Two distinct sleeps separated by a quiet waking hour. And when researchers recreated ancient darkness in a modern lab, that exact pattern reappeared on its own within weeks. So the next time you wake up at 3 in the morning for no clear reason and lie there in the dark, unable to fall back asleep, and start to worry that something is wrong with you, there's a real chance nothing is wrong at all. You might be doing something your ancestors did every single night for most of human history, something only a couple hundred years of artificial light managed to train out of us. We didn't evolve to survive without sleep. There's a good chance we evolved to sleep in two pieces, with the dark, quiet hour in between doing just as much work as the sleep on either side of it. If you want to dig deeper into any of this, all the research is linked down in the description.